Zombies! Now we all knew that it was only a matter of time before the ravenous, flesh-hungry living dead shambled their way across the top 5 scary videos set in an attempt to rip us all to shreds and eat our brains. But don't worry guys, our prior education in the scholarship of horror has taught us many things about surviving the zombie apocalypse, and we've got a plan in place for when the living dead do rise up, as I hope you all do too. Now listen, the zombie genre is a difficult one. It's been done to death, pun intended, and remains to be filled to the brim with some of the best and the worst of the worst. So let's take a look and see what we can do. Hello horror fans, what's going on, and once again welcome back to the Scariest channel on YouTube, top 5 scary videos. As per usual, I'll be your horror host Jack Finch, as today we curiously take a look at the top 5 scariest zombie horror movies of all time. Roll the clip. For the curious amongst you, that clip was from, of course, Edgar Wright's 2004 game-changing horror comedy, Shaun of the Dead, and it leads us to an initial opening point. If you're asking me, Shaun of the Dead is one of the greatest zombie movies ever made, but it's not scary, and I know that you guys came for the spooks and not the laughs. Consider this the most honourable of honourable mentions, and put Shaun of the Dead right next to Zombieland and Peter Jackson's Dead Alive, because if you want horror comedy, there's none better. Kicking off at number 5, The Girl with All the Gifts, 2016. And this one pretty much flew under the radar for most people, but I think it's important to note that in an oversaturated genre such as The Living Dead, you either need to define or redefine the meaning of zombies to make the grade, and that's exactly what 2016's The Girl with All the Gifts manages to do. One of the most difficult yet important devices in zombie horror is to make us actually care for the characters, because as human life diminishes, it becomes more and more valuable as a narrative concept. So enter Melanie, played by the awesome young actor Seni Ananua, who isn't a survivor of the zombie apocalypse in the conventional sense, but instead a plague-ridden zombie herself. Directed by Colin McCarthy and written by Mike Carey, based on his novel of the same name, The Girl with All the Gifts paints the picture of a post-apocalyptic Britain, where society has been ravaged by a fungal infection similar to that of the Last of Us video game series, and a small pocket of survivors are trying their utmost to reignite civilization whilst the fungal living dead roam the wasteland. The thing is though, Melanie is one of a series of strange zombie-human hybridizations, and the key to ensuring the survival of humanity may lie within her. However, what initially seems like a worn-out horror hero's tale on the surface quickly becomes subverted, but of course, no spoilers. And also, despite its weighty narrative, this film never skimps on the gore and the chilling suspense that we expect in zombie horror, because it delivers it in spades. Oh, and double also, this film stars freaking Glenn Close alongside the resounding Paddy Considine and Gemma Arterton. For a film that largely went ignored, it's one of the best modern depictions of zombie horror. Give it a watch. Coming in at number 4, Train to Busan, 2016. And we've covered this film before in our top 5 scariest Korean horror movies list, but let's face it, it's just too damn good to pass up when it comes to zombie horror. Horror aside, Train to Busan is a phenomenal film and a must-see for any fan of cinema. And also, as a few of our top 5 scary fans pointed out on our previous list, you should also check out the animated prequel Seoul Station if you're in the mood for some highly stylized blood and gore. Written by Park Joo-suk and directed by Yeon Sang-ho, Train to Busan is relatively straightforward in its approach. A high-speed passenger train departs from Seoul Station just as the zombie apocalypse begins ravaging its way across the country. And as soon as the train pulls out of that station, boom, the onslaught begins. With such a simple premise though, it allows the film to breathe in all the right ways. And whilst rightfully Train to Busan really does bring the gore and suspense in spades, much like our previous entry, it also allows room for us to care about these characters. And that's an understated importance that many other films in this genre fail to capture. What use is the end of the world if there's nothing at stake? Right? Train to Busan tells the tale of a workaholic father and his young daughter as he reluctantly journeys to Busan to see her mother, and despite being caught up in a flaming train filled to the brim with the living dead, Train to Busan still manages to make us care about their rocky father-daughter relationship. I won't spoil anything because if you haven't seen Train to Busan, it's an experience that you'll remember, and in the words of Edgar Wright himself, it's the best zombie movie I've seen in forever. Next up at number 3, 28 Days Later, 2002. Where do we even begin with the importance of Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later? I mean, some people would even argue that 28 Days Later isn't a zombie horror. And yeah, alright, I suppose at a push I could see where they're coming from, but as we stated with our opening entry, The Girl with All the Gifts, zombie horror needs to either define or redefine what the living dead actually are to be successful. So then enter 28 Days Later, where zombies were eschewed by rage-ridden, terrifying husks of human hunger that could sprint. Forget the shambling, slow-moving, cemetery-loving living dead, because these guys are running across rooftops and jumping through windows. And that is a terrifying thought, right? Written by Alex Garland and directed by the legendary British auteur Danny Boyle, 28 Days Later, much like its predecessors, ripped out the page for the zombie genre and subsequently covered it in rage-riddled blood. It tells the tale of Jim, played by the remarkable Cillian Murphy, who awakens from a coma in an abandoned hospital to find that the country has fallen into a post-apocalyptic wasteland after a highly contagious, rage-inducing virus was unleashed in Great Britain following the intervention of a group of animal rights activists at a chemical weapons laboratory. Now, I'd be surprised if many of you haven't yet seen 28 Days Later, but that's all I'll say in fear of spoilers. But this film really is as good as it's heralded. It's incredibly British, it's suspenseful in all the right places, but it also manages to produce a new kind of fear: running zombies. Let's just hope if the zombie apocalypse ever does happen that we don't get Danny Boyle's version of events, because we'd be doubly screwed. Swinging in at number 2, Night of the Living Dead, 1968. They're coming to get you, Barbara. And you guys were just waiting for this one to rear its ugly head, weren't you? And although he didn't exactly invent the zombie genre, George A. Romero is the man responsible for defining what the living dead could be in the world of horror cinema, and is without a doubt the most influential horror filmmaker when it comes to flesh-hungry ghouls and zombies. Of course, the top of this list has to be reserved for the main man himself, because truth be told, zombie horror wouldn't be what it is today without Romero, so thank you, George. The origins of horror cinema owe so many tropes to 1968's Night of the Living Dead that we could probably make an entire video on its significance alone. Isolated farmhouse in the countryside? Check. Ragtag group of survivors? Check. Society falling to ruin? Check. In fact, before Night of the Living Dead, the term zombie was wrapped up in the mystical realm of voodoo, an exotic concept encapsulated in the likes of 1932's White Zombie. There was less hordes of the living dead and more evil voodoo priests. Romero brought the concept of the zombie and dropped it smack bang in the middle of rural America, where he highlighted the fragility of society and, more importantly, showed us just how easily fear can spread itself across a community. Night of the Living Dead still holds up to this day, and rightfully so. However, there is one entry that remains to take the zombie cake. Because finally, coming in at our number 1 spot, Dawn of the Dead, 1978.
I got him. Missed.
And this list would not be complete unless we gave George Romero's Dawn of the Dead the credit that it deserves, because 10 years after he defined the genre in Night of the Living Dead, he somehow managed to do it all over again with 1978's Dawn of the Dead. This time by taking the themes encapsulated in his first foray into zombie horror and reapplying them to a world that had been shaped and forever changed by the fear of the living dead. Dawn of the Dead is the quintessential zombie horror, and it paved the way for the rest of the genre, like the blood-spattered floor of a mall infested by zombies. And we pretty much owe the modern concept of post-apocalyptic fiction to the vivid portrayal of society that Romero painted in Dawn of the Dead. Again, just like with Night of the Living Dead, this film manages to cram in so many themes synonymous with the genre, and yet still manages to perfectly thread them without being overbearing. Because after all, the reason Dawn of the Dead resonates the way that it does is because it's terrifying. And no, I'm not talking about the ashen-faced zombie ghouls that are albeit dated and a little cringe. I'm talking about the small side stories that Dawn of the Dead manages to thread and weave throughout its narrative. The rural community that hunts zombies for sport, the nihilistic bikers that roam the wasteland for opportunity, the corruption that comes with greed when our group of survivors find themselves an abundance of resources. This stuff was so ahead of its time for horror cinema, and it was a stark insight into the reason why zombie cinema resonates with so many people. Horror is a simulation of fear, and the zombie genre is nothing unless it makes the viewer ask the question, what would you do if the living dead had risen? Because, as we know, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. Well, there we have it, horror fans, our list for the top 5 scary zombie horror movies of all time. What did you guys think? I know for certain that there'll be more added onto this list, and we know we can't please everybody, so please let us know your thoughts, as well as your own top 5 list down in the comment section below. Before we depart from today's video though, let's first take a quick look at some of your more creative comments from over the past few days. First up, Boris the Cat says, "Hey Jack, question for you. Do you have any pets? Are you more of a cat person or a dog person?" Hello Boris the Cat, that is a great question, and yes I do. I have a cat named Mango and a dog named Ruby, both of which I love very very much, and they're back in the UK living it up in style. I really don't want to choose between being a cat person and a dog person. Both of them bring so much joy in their own unique way, don't they? In a zombie apocalypse though, hands down, I choose dogs, obviously. You expect me to say cats? Well, on that note, horror fans, that's unfortunately all we've got time for in today's video. Cheers for sticking around all the way until the end. If you were a fan of this video or just top 5 scary videos in general, then please be a dear and hit that thumbs up button as well as that subscribe bell, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. As per usual, I've been your horror host, Jack Finch. You've been watching top 5 scary videos, and until next time, you take it easy.